Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we really try to cut through all the noise and deliver the most essential insights from, well, a whole stack of sources, custom tailored for you, our listener. And today, we're diving headfirst into something I think we can all relate to. You know that feeling? Staring at a mountain of notes, just no idea where to begin.
Oh, definitely. Or that dread when finals week is just looming large, that pit in your stomach.
Exactly. That creeping dread. Everyone, at some point, has faced that intense pressure of an exam.
It's a truly universal experience, isn't it? And the stakes, they can feel incredibly high. It often leads to this profound overwhelm, especially if you don't have a clear strategy, a clear, actionable strategy.
Yeah, a real plan. And that's precisely why we're here today. Our mission is to equip you with, well, the ultimate guide to exam preparation. We've distilled some invaluable insights from a comprehensive 3-page resource on exam preparation, strategic planning, to last-minute cramming.
Right. So whether you're someone who likes to plan weeks ahead,
or maybe you're facing that last-minute crunch. We've all been there.
absolutely.
This deep dive is your shortcut to being truly well-informed on how to tackle exams. Our goal is basically to arm you with some surprising facts, lots of practical techniques, and, just enough humor, hopefully, to keep you hooked.
Helping you not just survive, but maybe even thrive during exam periods.
Yeah, thrive, reduce stress, maximize performance. That's the aim.
We want to empower you with actionable knowledge, really moving you beyond just sort of wishing for academic success.
Right?
To actively building it no matter what timeline you find yourself on.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we even get into the what to study, let's tackle the fundamental why of planning. Why is a well-structured study plan not just helpful, but actually essential for doing well on exams?
That's a great question.
Because, for some people, the idea of just winging it or waiting till the last minute, it almost feels like a badge of honor, right?
It does, doesn't it? That temptation to wing it is definitely strong for a lot of people, especially maybe those who feel they work best under pressure.
Yeah.
But our source material makes it abundantly clear. A study plan is your indispensable roadmap. Its core purpose, really, is to completely prevent that common panic of not knowing where to even start.
That paralysis.
Exactly. That feeling can paralyze even the most capable student. Think about it like this. If you were going on a complex journey, you wouldn't set off without a detailed map, right? You might wander aimlessly, miss crucial landmarks, get stuck, or, even run out of gas before you reach your destination.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the key benefits of a plan, they're undeniable. They go way beyond just covering the material. It ensures you cover all your bases, allocate your time and energy wisely, and crucially, it carves out that essential time for rest and recovery.
Which you mentioned is in the first thing to go.
Absolutely. It's the first thing people sacrifice when the pressure cooker heats up.
That point about rest and recovery, it really resonates because it is often the first thing students just ditch when things get intense. What's the biggest misconception people have about taking those breaks, especially when they're facing really high-stakes exams?
I think the biggest misconception is that breaks are somehow a luxury or maybe even a sign of weakness, like you're slacking off if you step away.
Right. I don't have time for breaks.
Exactly. But in reality, they are a biological necessity for optimal cognitive function. Your brain actually needs them to process information effectively. Without a plan, you're risking a pretty significant downfall.
How so?
Well, you might spend way too much time on subjects that aren't worth as many points, maybe the ones you enjoy or just find easier.
Comfort zone studying.
Precisely. And while you're doing that, you're critically neglecting the areas where you could make the most substantial gains. Those really challenging subjects or the topics that carry a higher weight for your final grade.
So you're busy, but not necessarily effective.
Exactly. It leads directly to this profound inefficiency in your study efforts. And perhaps even more importantly, it causes a sharp increase in anxiety and stress because you constantly feel behind or unprepared.
Yeah, that feeling of always playing catch up.
What's really fascinating here, though, is how much this initial commitment to just making a plan acts as a foundational stress reducer.
Ah, interesting.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really about taking proactive control in a high-pressure situation. And that's a valuable skill far beyond academics, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Life skill.
It just raises this important question. How often do people underestimate the huge psychological benefit of simply having a clear plan? It gives you this profound sense of agency, this feeling of control.
Yeah, like you're in the driver's seat.
Exactly, rather than just feeling like you're reacting to the chaos of looming deadlines all around you.
That feeling of agency, that's incredibly powerful. It's like knowing you have a clear path and maybe a compass, even when the terrain ahead looks really steep and unfamiliar. So, okay, let's say you're convinced. A well-structured plan is your superpower. Where do you actually begin? Like, what's the very first concrete step to building this roadmap?
Right. So the very first step, and ideally you'd start this maybe 2 to 3 weeks out from your first exam,
Okay.
is what our source calls the information dump. Essentially, it's about knowing your battlefield inside and out.
Your battlefield, I like that.
Before you can even think about planning your time effectively, before you open a single textbook, you need to know exactly what you're up against. This is your intelligence gathering phase.
Intelligence gathering.
Skipping it is like going into battle blindfolded. You wouldn't start a major expedition without first understanding the terrain, the weather forecast, what resources you need, would you?
No, that would be foolish. So, intelligence gathering, it sounds serious, but what does that actually involve in practical terms for a student? Like, what do I actually do?
It starts with some very actionable, pretty fundamental steps. First, just list every single final exam, every paper, every project that's due. And I mean every single one. Don't miss anything. Not even those smaller assignments that might contribute a little bit to your grade. This basic step often catches people out later.
Okay, got my list. Then what?
Then, for each exam on that list, you need to absolutely nail down the fundamental logistical details, get them right to avoid those last-minute crises.
Right, the panic moments.
Exactly. That means confirming the precise date, the exact time, and the location. Double-check them against the official schedules. Because realizing you wrote down the wrong exam time or you're in the wrong building.
Oh, that's a classic stomach-dropping panic moment. We've all heard horror stories about that, or maybe even lived one.
Precisely. So beyond the logistics, you need to deeply understand the format of each exam. Is it multiple choice, short answer, essays, problem solving, or some kind of mix?
Why is the format so important? Isn't the content what matters?
The content matters hugely, of course, but this specific detail, the format, it isn't just administrative. It dictates how you should be studying.
Ah, okay. How so?
Well, for instance, a multiple-choice exam often requires strong memorization of facts, definitions, maybe distinguishing between closely related concepts. So things like flashcards, spaced repetition systems, active recall, those become crucial.
Right. Practice recognizing the right answer among similar options.
Exactly. You might even practice identifying common distractors that professors often use in multiple-choice questions.
So it's not just knowing the material, but really understanding how you'll be tested on it, like the specific skill they're testing.
Precisely. Essay exams, on the other hand, they demand a completely different skill set, don't they?
Totally different.
They need synthesis of ideas, critical thinking, the ability to build a coherent, well-supported argument, and just effective written communication.
Yeah, you can't just list facts.
No. For those, outlining essays under timed conditions, practicing writing full essays, critically evaluating evidence, those become essential study activities. It's not enough to simply know the content. You have to practice articulating it persuasively and structuring it logically.
Okay. And what about exams with, like, math problems or physics questions?
Right. Those problem-solving exams, common in math, physics, engineering, chemistry. Success there really hinges on application. Just reviewing solutions isn't going to cut it.
You have to actually do the
You have to actively work through tons of practice problems step by step, understand the underlying principles, learn to recognize different problem types, identify common pitfalls. It's almost like being a mechanic diagnosing an engine issue. You need hands-on practice.
That makes so much sense. You wouldn't train for a marathon the same way you'd train for a 100-meter sprint.
Yeah.
The format absolutely dictates the training, the way you prepare.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. Next up, consider the weight of each exam. How much does it actually contribute to your final grade?
Ah, the weighting. That's often overlooked.
It is, and our source highlights a stark critical difference here. A final exam that's worth, say, 50% of your grade absolutely needs significantly more attention and focused study time than one that's worth maybe 15%.
Obvious when you say it, but easy to forget in the panic.
It's all about strategic time allocation, putting your precious energy where it will have the biggest impact on your overall result.
Okay. Logistics, format, weight. What else?
Finally, understand the content. Is the exam cumulative, covering everything from day one, or is it focused only on the second half of the semester?
Big difference there.
Huge difference. And what are the key topics, the specific chapters or lectures that the professor has explicitly emphasized, maybe in class, on the syllabus, or in review sessions?
Those hints they drop.
Exactly. Those are often the golden nuggets for focused study. Professors frequently test what they have highlighted as most important. Pay attention to those signals.
Those golden nuggets are absolute lifesavers when you feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of material. They really help narrow the focus.
They do. And just to round off this whole information dump phase, gather all your materials.
Get organized.
Get organized. Collect all your notes, your textbooks, any past quizzes or assignments, official study guides if you have them, relevant practice problems for each subject. Get it all in one centralized location, whether that's a physical pile or a digital folder.
Why is that so important?
It just prevents wasted time searching for things later when every single minute counts. It ensures you have all your resources right at your fingertips when you sit down to study.
Okay.
This initial information dump phase, it's truly foundational. What's fascinating, though, is how often students, just in their eagerness to start studying, jump right in without fully understanding the precise parameters of the challenge ahead.
Yeah, they skip the recon.
They skip the recon.
Yeah.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, it's like preparing for that journey without a map, without understanding your vehicle, without even really knowing the final destination clearly. It raises an important question. How much efficiency, how much time and energy is lost when this crucial first step is skipped or just done superficially? It often leads to misdirected effort and a whole lot of unnecessary anxiety.
I can already feel my own stress levels dropping just thinking about having all that information meticulously organized. It sounds so calming. Okay, so once you've done your comprehensive intelligence gathering, you know exactly what you're facing. What's the next strategic move in building this exam success roadmap?
The second step is creating what the source calls the master calendar. This is your bird's eye view of your entire finals period.
Okay, the big picture.
The big picture. You can use a digital calendar, a big physical desk planner, even just a simple sheet of paper works fine. The main action here is to block out the entire finals period. From today, right up until your very last exam is finished. Visually lay out that whole time frame.
So you're not just scheduling blocks of study time here, you're actually plotting out your entire life during what can be a really intense period, making sure you don't overlook crucial elements. So what does this mean for your daily routine beyond just hitting the books?
It means prioritizing your non-negotiables and not just the academic ones. First, and absolutely without exception, enter all your fixed commitments. Your exam dates and times, those are sacred, they're unmovable.
Lock them in.
Lock them in. Then add in any work shifts you have, essential appointments, doctor visits, whatever. Also add any pre-scheduled review sessions with professors or study groups.
Okay.
But crucially, and this is highlighted repeatedly in our source because it's so vital and so often overlooked, schedule 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night.
Ah, sleep. The
Yeah.
constant battle. We'll definitely talk more about the dreaded all-nighter later.
Yeah.
But why is sleep so emphatically non-negotiable? Why stress it so much in a study plan?
Because it's not optional downtime. It's not a luxury. It's a non-negotiable biological requirement for effective learning and specifically for memory consolidation.
Memory consolidation.
Wow.
What exactly happens?
Well, what's surprising to many people is that during sleep, especially during those deep, slow-wave sleep cycles, your brain isn't just resting. It's actively replaying and consolidating the day's memories and learning experiences. It's literally moving information from your brain's temporary RAM, like your hippocampus, into more permanent long-term storage in the cortex.
Wow. So pulling an all-nighter actually stops that process?
It essentially cuts off that critical memory transfer. It makes those last few hours of frantic cramming almost entirely pointless for lasting retention and efficient recall later on. Without adequate sleep, all that hard work you put into studying just won't stick effectively.
And you won't be able to pull it out when you need it during the exam.
Exactly. Your ability to retrieve that information under pressure will be severely impaired. So once you have all those fixed commitments, exams, work, appointments, and vitally, your 7-8 hours of sleep blocked out on your calendar,
Then you see what's left.
then you can honestly assess the empty blocks that remain. This is your actual available study time. And it's profoundly important here to be realistic. Be honest with yourself about how many focused, high-quality study hours you can truly handle in a day without completely burning out.
Right. Don't schedule 16 hours of study a day.
Please don't. Overscheduling just leads to feeling overwhelmed, becoming demotivated, and ultimately just giving up on your plan altogether. It needs to be sustainable.
Okay, so you know exactly what you're up against. You've done the info dump. You've mapped out your precious finite time on the master calendar, including sleep. Now comes what often feels like the hardest part, deciding where to actually focus your limited energy. How do you prioritize?
Exactly. That brings us to step 3. Prioritize and triage. This is your battle plan for focus. The core concept here is recognizing that not all subjects or exams are created equal, right? Not in terms of difficulty for you or in terms of their importance to your final grade.
Yeah, some count way more than others.
Precisely. So you need a systematic method, a way to strategically determine where to focus your limited energy for maximum impact. Our source suggests a simple but really powerful matrix. For each subject, you rate 2 things. Your confidence level, basically, how well do you know the material, low or high? And the exam's impact, how much does this exam count towards your final grade, high or low?
Okay, a 2x2 matrix, confidence and impact.
Exactly. This simple exercise forces you to confront reality and make some strategic, sometimes tough decisions about where your time is best spent.
So we're talking about 4 quadrants then, right? Can you walk us through them? Maybe give an example for each so our listeners can really picture how to apply this to their own situation.
Absolutely. Let's break down each quadrant. We'll start with the most critical one. Quadrant 1, high impact, low confidence.
Okay, sounds scary.
These are your absolute top priority subjects, no question. These are your most challenging classes, the ones you feel least confident in, and they also have heavily weighted finals. This is where you must allocate the most significant chunk of your dedicated study time and mental energy.
Give us an example.
Okay, imagine that challenging calculus final that's worth maybe 40% of your overall grade, and you're still really struggling with derivatives or integration. That's your make or break subject right there.
Got it. Quadrant 1 gets the lion's share of focus.
Absolutely. Neglecting these is basically academic suicide.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Where should your energy go next after you've allocated time for those top priorities?
Then you move to quadrant 2, high impact, high confidence. These are subjects where you actually feel pretty good about the material, you understand it well, but the exam is still highly important for your grade. It carries a significant weight.
So you can't just ignore them.
Exactly. Complacency is the enemy here. For these, schedule regular review sessions. Maybe shorter, but consistent, just to keep the material fresh in your mind and prevent any knowledge from slipping away. You don't necessarily need to learn new concepts, but you need to ensure sharp recall.
Like what?
An example might be a history class you really enjoy and understand well, but the final is comprehensive, covers the whole semester, and it's worth 30% of your grade. You need to maintain that high level of readiness. Keep practicing retrieval.
Okay. High impact, high confidence, maintain, and review. What about the flip side? Subjects you're genuinely struggling with, but perhaps they don't count for as much in terms of the overall grade. How do you approach those?
That's quadrant 3. Low impact, low confidence. You're struggling in these subjects, you're not confident, but the exam itself isn't worth a huge percentage of your final grade.
So what's the strategy here? Damage control.
Pretty much. Your goal here is realistically to aim for a passing grade, maybe a bit better, with highly targeted, efficient studying. Focus on the absolute basics needed to pass. Crucially, do not let this subject disproportionately drain time and energy away from your vital quadrant 1 priorities.
Don't let it become a time sink.
Exactly. You're looking for the most points for the least possible effort here. Focus on the absolute essentials to just scrape by competently. An example could be, say, a minor elective course, maybe worth only 10% of your final grade, where you found the material particularly challenging or just not engaging. Don't invest precious quadrant 1 time trying to master it. Aim for competency on the key points.
Okay, triage in action. And the last quadrant.
Finally, quadrant 4. Low impact, high confidence. This is your lowest priority category. You feel confident in these subjects, you know the material well, and the exam doesn't carry much weight for your final grade.
So quick review and move on.
Pretty much. A quick review session or 2 should be totally sufficient just to refresh your memory. Don't overstudy these. Your time is far, far better spent nailing quadrant 1 and maintaining quadrant 2.
That matrix seems like a really practical tool.
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture again, this isn't just about studying, is it? It's a powerful framework for strategic resource allocation. It applies to any complex project or demanding period in life, managing a work project, planning a big event, tackling a personal challenge.
True. It's about prioritizing limited resources.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how it forces you to confront reality and make tough, sometimes uncomfortable choices about where your limited resources, your time, your mental energy, your emotional bandwidth are best spent for the biggest return.
Yeah.
This raises an important question, though. How can listeners resist that very common urge to overstudy what they already know, stay in quadrant 4, or dedicate too much time to those low-impact subjects in quadrant 3 simply because they find them easier or maybe more enjoyable?
The comfort trap.
It's a really common trap because studying those comfortable subjects provides this false sense of productivity, this easy win, when your energy should really be focused on the harder, more impactful stuff.
That's a significant challenge for sure. The pull of comfort, of feeling like you're making progress, even if it's not on the most important things, that can be really strong. Okay, so you've meticulously prioritized your subjects using the matrix. But even a top priority task like study for calculus still feels like this daunting, undifferentiated mass of work, right? How do you actually get started without feeling completely overwhelmed?
That brings us perfectly to step 4, break it down into micro tasks. This is absolutely key for conquering that feeling of overwhelm. The inherent problem with these broad, vague tasks like study for biology or write English paper,
This loom over you.
they loom, they're overwhelming, and they're a major source of anxiety. They're simply too big to start easily, which often leads directly to procrastination and that paralyzing feeling of just not knowing where to begin. Your brain kind of rebels against such large, undefined tasks.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Just staring at the blank page or the open textbook, feeling absolutely paralyzed by the sheer scope of it all. It's awful.
The solution, and it's remarkably effective, is to break down these large, intimidating subjects into really small, concrete, and highly manageable actions, bite-sized pieces.
Microtasks.
Microtasks. This process immediately makes studying feel less daunting and far more achievable. It gives you that vital sense of progress and accomplishment with each small task you complete.
Can you give some examples? Like, how do you turn study biology into microtasks?
Sure. So instead of the vague study biology, you could break it down into things like review chapter 12 flashcards for 30 minutes, or redraw the Krebs cycle from memory in 15 minutes and label all the components. Or maybe complete practice questions 1 through 20 on cellular respiration should take about 45 minutes. Each of those is a discrete, actionable step with a clear beginning and end and an estimated time.
Okay, much more manageable. What about something like writing a paper?
Same principle. Instead of the amorphous write English paper, you could have microtasks like finalize my thesis statement in 20 minutes using those 2 specific sources I found. Or outline body paragraph 1, aiming for 3 supporting points, maybe take 30 minutes. Or find and annotate 3 specific quotes to support my main argument. Give myself 45 minutes for that.
So what does this all mean in practice? It means you're turning this daunting mountain of work into a series of achievable little molehills. And that feels incredibly empowering, doesn't it?
It really does.
This isn't just about being organized. It's fundamentally about building tangible momentum and boosting your confidence as you literally check off each smaller task. It kind of tricks your brain into thinking the overall task isn't so bad after all because you're making visible progress.
Precisely. And then the crucial next step is to integrate these specific bite-sized microtasks into those open slots you identified earlier on your master calendar.
Connecting the what with the when.
Exactly. This transforms a vague, overwhelming goal like study bio into a clear, actionable to-do list for every single scheduled study session. It makes it infinitely easier to just sit down and actually start working rather than getting lost in indecision about what to tackle first.
So you're not just scheduling hard, putting in the hours, you're scheduling smart. What are some of those smart techniques, those proven methods that make your study hours truly effective, whether you have weeks to prepare or maybe just days?
Right. That's step 5. Schedule smart, not just hard, which involves using proven study techniques to maximize your efficiency. The core concept here is that it's not just about dutifully putting in the hours. It's about making every one of those hours as effective and high yield as possible. Our source highlights several key methods, starting with one you might have heard of, the Pomodoro technique.
Oh, I love the Pomodoro technique. Tomato timer, right?
Yeah.
Such a game changer for maintaining focus, I find.
It truly is, and the method is deceptively simple, yet it's scientifically quite profound. Basically, you study in highly focused 25-minute intervals, that's 1 Pomodoro, followed by a mandatory 5-minute break, No cheating on the break.
I got to take the break.
You've got to take the break. After you complete 4 Pomodoros, so that's 100 minutes of intense study broken up by 15 minutes of short breaks, you then take a longer break, maybe 15 to 30 minutes.
Why does that work so well? Why the short bursts?
The benefits are really well documented, and they leverage how our brains naturally work. Research consistently shows that our ability to sustain focused attention tends to wane significantly after about 20 to 30 minutes.
Ah, wow.
So by building in those mandatory 5-minute micro breaks, you're allowing your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive functions like focus, planning, decision-making, to briefly reset and recover.
Like a little mental reboot.
Exactly. It prevents cognitive fatigue, it optimizes how you process information, and it significantly improves retention over longer periods. It's like micro-recharging your brain's battery, preventing it from completely draining before you even realize it.
That makes a lot of sense. What else helps to schedule smart and keep your brain firing on all cylinders during these intense study periods?
Another valuable tip our source mentions is to maybe theme your days. If you find it helpful for minimizing context switching in your brain and encouraging deeper engagement with the material.
What do you mean by theme?
You could assign a primary subject, let's say chemistry, and maybe a secondary, less demanding subject, like reviewing Spanish vocabulary, to each specific day. This helps your brain stay in one particular mode for longer periods, potentially improving the depth of your focus rather than constantly jumping between completely different conceptual frameworks, which can be mentally taxing.
Interesting. So dedicating days to certain areas.
It can work well for some people, and something absolutely critical for real-world application, build-in buffers.
So spare time.
Exactly. Life happens, right? Unexpected distractions pop up. Tasks often take longer than you initially estimated. Smart scheduling means deliberately leaving a few empty blocks in your schedule, maybe an hour here or there. These are specifically for catching up, dealing with unforeseen issues, or for when a particular microtask expands unexpectedly.
Oh, that's brilliant. It acknowledges reality.
It dramatically reduces stress when things don't go perfectly according to plan, which, let's be honest, they rarely do during a busy finals period. It's about building resilience right into your schedule.
That's genius. It's like building flexibility and resilience directly into your study plan, anticipating those inevitable bumps in the road. I love that. And what about that self-care element you mentioned earlier? How does that fit into a truly smart schedule? It's not just about study blocks, right?
Not at all. You absolutely must actively schedule self-care. This means deliberately blocking out time in your master calendar for things like proper meals, not just grabbing snacks on the run, maybe a 30-minute walk outside to get some fresh air and sunlight, or even just a quick call with a supportive friend or family member.
But why? When time feels so scarce, why waste it on a walk?
The source emphasizes why this isn't a luxury, and it's certainly not wasted time. It's actually an indispensable part of the effective study process itself. Your brain desperately needs that downtime to consolidate information, to process what you've learned subconsciously, and to prevent crippling fatigue.
So the breaks help the learning stick.
Precisely. It's often during these moments of rest and disengagement from active studying that your brain effectively moves information from short-term working memory into more stable long-term memory stores. This enables deeper understanding and ultimately better recall when you need it most. It's part of the process. So this whole section really underscores that true productivity, especially cognitive productivity, isn't about relentless, uninterrupted work. It's much more about strategic breaks, self-awareness, and effective self-management.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating here is the deliberate inclusion of these buffers and self-care activities as non-negotiable parts of a smart schedule, rather than just being hopeful afterthoughts if you happen to have time left over.
Right, they're scheduled in.
They're scheduled in.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it raises a really important question. Why do we so often feel guilty taking these demonstrably essential breaks, even when we know intellectually that they are critical for cognitive function and long-term retention?
That's so true. The guilt is real.
It's almost as if we've been conditioned, maybe by hustle culture or academic pressure, to believe that simply being awake and busy for more hours automatically equals more productivity, when often the exact opposite is profoundly true, especially for complex learning.
Okay, let's unpack this for the realities of life. Because we've definitely all been there, haven't we? That ideal proactive planning we just talked about, it didn't quite happen.
Yeah. Life gets in the way.
Life got in the way. Maybe you just misjudged the workload. Maybe procrastination won. You look at the calendar and suddenly realize you have maybe 48 hours or, gosh, even less, until a really major exam.
Yep. panic stations.
The raw panic starts to set in. So, okay, for everyone listening who might be in that situation right now or knows it's coming, let's take a deep breath together.
This section absolutely acknowledges that reality. And the core message here is critical. A strategic, well-thought-out cram session, however imperfect it feels, is worlds better than just a frantic, unfocused, all-night panic session where you achieve very little.
Okay, so there is a better way to cram.
There is.
Yeah.
This section isn't about achieving long-term learning or true mastery. You know, that ship has probably sailed at this point.
Right. Let's be realistic.
Let's be realistic. Instead, it's purely about maximizing your score in the immediate short term. It's about making the absolute most of a bad situation. Think of it as academic damage control, but with a highly precise tactical strategy.
Okay. Academic damage control. I like it. So if you find yourself in that 24 or 48-hour crunch when time is undeniably your enemy, what are the golden rules of effective cramming? Because you said earlier there's absolutely no time for passive learning at this stage, right?
Absolutely zero time for passive learning. That's the first thing to ditch. The first golden rule, though, and it can be a tough one mentally for many people, is to accept your fate in triage ruthlessly.
Accept your fate. Sounds grim.
Well, it means accepting you cannot learn everything. You just can't. Let go of that fantasy of somehow achieving A+ mastery or covering every single minute detail in 24 hours. That's just setting yourself up for failure and even more panic.
Okay, so lower the expectations realistically.
Lower the expectations realistically. Your singular goal now is simply to salvage the maximum number of points possible on that exam paper.
Right. Maximize points. How?
To do this, you must ruthlessly identify the topics that are most likely to appear on the exam and are worth the most points. Go back to that weighting idea.
Where do you find those clues?
Professor-provided study guides, if they exist, are absolute gold for this. So our old quizzes, lecture slides where they spend a lot of time, or any topics the professor explicitly emphasized in class or review sessions, those are your highest yield targets. Focus your fire there.
Okay, focus with laser precision on the highest yield material. Got it. What's rule number 2? You mentioned ditching passive review, which sounds like it goes against many students' natural instincts when they're panicking.
It does. Rule 2 is ditch passive review. This is absolutely crucial when time is short. Rereading the textbook chapters or just passively scanning your notes is explicitly stated in our source as the single biggest waste of time when cramming.
Wow. The single biggest waste. Why? It feels productive.
It feels productive, and that's the trap. Because your eyes are moving over the words, you're recognizing information you've seen before. But this creates what psychologists call an illusion of knowing, or a deceptive familiarity.
Illusion of knowing.
Your brain isn't retrieving the information from memory, it's merely recognizing it on the page. And recognition doesn't strengthen the memory pathways you need for actual recall under pressure during the exam.
Okay, so you need to force your brain to work harder.
Exactly. Your brain needs to be actively working with the material, forcing retrieval, forcing application, forcing explanation. That's what builds short-term recall strength quickly.
Okay. No passive reading. And finally, the rule that so many students famously and often tragically get wrong, the all-nighter myth.
Rule 3. Sleep is a non-negotiable weapon, even when cramming. Let me be crystal clear.
Wow.
An all-nighter is unequivocally described as self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage. Strong words.
Because the source explains why it's so detrimental. We touched on this before, but during sleep, especially during that deep, slow-wave sleep, your brain is actively consolidating what you've just frantically reviewed into more stable memory. It literally replays the day's learning, cementing it.
And no sleep means?
No sleep means that consolidation process gets shut down. That information you tried so hard to cram is far, far less likely to stick and be retrievable when you actually need it most sitting in the exam hall.
So how much sleep are we talking is even a little bit helpful?
Yes. The minimum goal, even in a desperate cram session, should be to aim for at least 3 to 4 hours of sleep. It's significantly better than 0.
Okay, 3-4 hours minimum.
Because a tired, sleep-deprived brain simply cannot recall information effectively. It can't connect concepts properly. It can't solve problems efficiently, no matter how many hours you spent staring at the books beforehand. It's just not capable of performing at its best. You're essentially handicapping yourself.
Wow.
What's really fascinating here is just how counterintuitive some of these rules might seem to students under pressure. Especially that stern warning against the all-nighter, which, as you said, many still wear like some kind of badge of honor.
Yeah, the heroic all-nighter.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights that effective learning even under extreme duress, hinges on respecting basic cognitive principles and our own brain biology. We can't just brute force learning against how our brains are wired.
Right.
This raises an important question, though. Why do students so often fall into the trap of passive review and severe sleep deprivation when these strategies are actively detrimental to short-term recall and exam performance?
What do you think it is?
I think it's often just that feeling of sheer panic and desperation driving unproductive behavior, isn't it? It overrides logical decision-making. They feel like they have to keep reading, have to stay awake, even if it's not actually helping.
It's that desperate feeling, isn't it? That irrational belief that more hours awake must equal more learning. But as you've clearly highlighted, based on the science, it just doesn't work that way. It's often an illusion. So, okay, if you are in that pressure cooker, that 24-hour crunch, what's the actual battle plan? How do you structure those precious few hours for maximum impact, moving beyond those cramming myths?
Right. The source outlines a really powerful phased approach. It calls it the 24-hour cramming battle plan. Phase 1 is reconnaissance and triage, and this should ideally take just the first 1 to 2 hours of your cram session.
Okay, quick start. What's the objective?
The objective here is simple. Quickly and decisively figure out what you need to study to maximize your immediate point scoring impact. No time wasted on low-yield stuff.
And the actions.
Your actions involve finding those high-yield topics we talked about. Scour the syllabus again, look at lecture slides, any provided study guides, even listen back to recordings of review sessions if you have them. Look for clues. What topics did the professor spend the most class time on? What concepts were repeatedly emphasized or appeared on past quizzes? These are your biggest hints, your predictive analytics for what's likely on the exam.
So basically, reverse engineer the exam. Figure out what the professor thinks is most important and what will likely give you the most points if you get it right.
Exactly. Then prioritize broad foundational concepts over tiny, minute details. It's significantly better to have a decent grasp of the core idea of, say, 5 major topics, understand their basic definitions, how they relate to each other, maybe have one key example for each, than it is to try and memorize some tiny, obscure factoid from just one chapter.
Go for breadth on key points, not exhaustive depth on everything.
Precisely. You're aiming for functional understanding of the big hitters. And finally, and this is critical for maintaining focus under pressure, make a hit list.
A hit list.
Create a simple, written down, prioritized list of maybe 5 to 8 major topics or concepts that you will focus on during your limited cramming time. And be absolutely ruthless. Tell yourself, anything not on this specific list is now dead to me for the next 24 hours.
Wow, okay. Ruthless focus.
This ensures extreme focus and prevents your panicked brain from getting distracted by less important lower-yield material that won't help your score much.
Okay, you've got your ruthless hit list, your targets are identified, now it's time for the active attack. How do you actually force-feed that essential information into your brain in the next, say, 8 to 12 hours, ensuring it actually sticks well enough for the exam?
Right. Phase 2 is the active attack. This will take up the bulk of your cramming time, maybe the next 8 to 12 hours, but importantly, it should be broken into those focused Pomodoro-style blocks with breaks. Don't try to do 12 hours straight.
Okay, breaks are still important.
Breaks are still vital, maybe even more so when cramming. The objective here is to force-feed the most important information from your hit list into your brain using intensely active methods. Remember, passive review won't cut it.
So what are the active options?
The source suggests choosing maybe 2 or 3 of the following options depending on your learning style and the type of material you're dealing with. First, you could create a mega summary sheet.
Like a sheet.
On just 1 or 2 pages maximum, synthesize the absolute key information from your hit list. Write down the major formulas, the critical definitions, key dates if relevant, essential diagrams, core concepts. The source emphasizes that the physical act of writing, organizing, and summarizing this information is a powerful study tool in itself. It forces processing. This sheet then becomes your Bible for the final hours before the exam, a super concise, high-yield document you created.
That sounds incredibly helpful, especially for someone who learns by doing and organizing information visually. What else can you do actively to maximize retention in this really tight time frame?
Another highly effective option, especially for problem-based subjects, is to work backwards from problems.
How does that work?
Grab practice exams, end-of-chapter questions, or old quizzes that relate to the topics on your hit list. Don't read the chapter first, just attempt a problem cold. If you get stuck, if you can't solve it, then you immediately go to your notes or the textbook to find the exact piece of information needed to solve that specific problem.
Ah, so it's very targeted learning.
Incredibly targeted, highly efficient. You're directly addressing application, which is what many exams fundamentally test anyway. You're not just reading aimlessly, you're actively problem solving and filling in your knowledge gaps precisely where they exist on the fly. You're training your brain to retrieve and apply, retrieve and apply.
Okay, that sounds powerful for math or science. And my personal favorite technique, which you mentioned, the rubber duck, the Feynman technique, you said it's surprisingly effective even when cramming.
Yes, the explain it out loud or Feynman technique, even in a hurried cram session, is phenomenal for building real understanding quickly. Pick a core concept from your hit list. Try to explain it out loud maybe to an empty chair, your pet, or indeed that trusty rubber duck.
Quack, quack.
The key is to explain it as simply as possible, as if you were teaching it to a child who has absolutely no prior knowledge of the subject.
And what happens if you get stuck?
That's the magic. If you get stuck, if you find yourself using jargon you can't define, or if you simply can't simplify it down to basic, clear language, you've just pinpointed a significant gap in your own understanding.
Diagnostic.
Exactly. It's a diagnostic tool. Then you go back to your source material, clarify that specific point of confusion, and then try explaining it again out loud until you can do so simply, clearly, and confidently without hesitation. This forces deep processing and understanding, not just surface-level recognition or memorization.
Okay, 3 really active, high-intensity techniques there. So let's say you've done your reconnaissance, made your hit list, and spent maybe 8-12 hours in these active attack modes. What happens in those final critical hours leading right up to the exam itself? What's the last phase of this cramming battle plan?
That's phase 3, consolidation and confidence. This covers roughly T-minus 2 to 6 hours before the exam starts. The objective here is twofold. First, to briefly review and consolidate what you've managed to learn, and second, crucially, to calm your nerves and build as much confidence as possible before you walk into that exam room.
How do you consolidate? More active recall.
Your main action here is actually to review the mega sheet you created earlier. Read through your summary sheet several times, actively engaging with the material you synthesized. This is the only passive style review that's really allowed at this late stage, precisely because it's reviewing your own actively created synthesis of the most critical information.
Okay. Reviewing your own work.
Exactly. And then, to make it slightly more active again, after reading it a few times, cover it up and try to rewrite the key points from memory. This is a final, quick test of your recall.
And what's absolutely unequivocally forbidden at this point? What's the biggest mistake people make in these final nerve-wracking hours?
Absolutely no new material. This is critical. Do not try to learn anything completely new at this stage. It's totally counterproductive.
Why not? Isn't every minute precious?
It will only create panic, dilute the focus you've built on your hit list topics, and actually interfere with the consolidation of what you've already strategically crammed. Your brain needs to solidify what's already in there, not try to frantically absorb fresh, unprocessed information right before the test.
Okay. Lock it down. No new stuff. What else?
And finally, and this is perhaps the most important action in this entire final phase, stop studying.
Stop. Completely.
Yes, at least 1 hour before the exam is scheduled to start, put everything away, all your notes, textbooks, summary sheets, flashcards, everything.
But why? Shouldn't you use every last second?
Your brain desperately needs this time to rest, to cool down, and to shift gears from that intense study mode into exam-taking mode. Use this precious hour constructively. Eat a light, protein-rich snack like some nuts or yogurt to stabilize your blood sugar. Hydrate with water. And maybe do some simple deep breathing exercises or light stretching to calm your nervous system.
So the goal isn't more cramming, it's getting calm.
The ultimate goal is to walk into that exam room feeling as calm, as clear-headed, and as prepared as humanly possible under the circumstances. Not agitated, frantic, or mentally overloaded.
This is where it really gets tactical, isn't it? We're talking about specific, actionable maneuvers you can employ when the clock is really ticking down, moving way beyond just passively reading to truly engaging with the material under intense pressure. So what does all this mean for your last few hours before an exam? It really means protecting that mental clarity and achieving a state of calm readiness above all else.
It truly does. Calm focus is your best asset at that point. And just as important as knowing what to do during a cram session is knowing what to avoid. Those common pitfalls you absolutely need to sidestep because they can undermine all your last-minute efforts.
Okay, what are the big traps?
First, you must avoid getting lost in the details. Remember, cramming is fundamentally about the big picture, the core concepts, the high-yield information. Resist that magnetic urge, that temptation, to dive down rabbit holes exploring minor, obscure details that are highly unlikely to give you many points and will only consume precious time and mental energy. Stay focused on your hit list.
Makes sense. What about studying with friends? That's a really common strategy for many students, but does it actually work during a frantic cram session?
Well, while the old saying, misery loves company, might feel true.
Ah,
And group study can be excellent for long-term planning, discussing complex ideas, and maintaining motivation over weeks. The source points out that studying with potentially distracted friends is usually highly inefficient for focused, last-minute cramming.
what is that?
You need a maximum individual concentration when time is this tight. The source emphasizes the need to study alone during this critical phase to maximize your personal focus and speed. Group study is great for collaborative learning over time, but it's generally not suited for last-minute, intense, individual knowledge acquisition under pressure. Save the group post-mortem for after the exam.
Okay, go solo for the cram. What else to avoid?
Finally, be acutely wary of relying heavily on caffeine and sugar as your primary fuel source to power through.
Ah, the energy drinks and candy bars.
Exactly. While they might offer a tempting temporary boost, that artificial surge will inevitably be followed by a hard crash. And the source warns, often during the exam itself, which is the worst possible time.
Nightmare scenario.
Absolutely. The advice is to use caffeine strategically if you use it at all, maybe 1 cup of coffee early in the session, and always, always pair it with plenty of water and real nutritious food, like protein and complex carbs, for sustained energy, not just these quick, fleeting, ultimately detrimental fixes.
So feel smart, even when cramming.
Especially when cramming. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, these aren't just casual suggestions. They are critical warnings gleaned from both experience and a deep understanding of how the brain and body function under duress. What's fascinating here is that these common pitfalls, getting lost in details, distracting group study, relying on stimulants, they often feel like intuitive solutions when you're under intense pressure. I need to know everything. I need to stay awake as long as possible. Misery loves company.
Yeah, they feel right in the moment of panic.
But they are demonstrably counterproductive to effective recall and performance. This raises another important question. Why do we, as humans, so often gravitate towards methods that ultimately sabotage our own best efforts, even when we might intellectually know better?
Why do we do that?
It truly speaks to the immense psychological pressure of the moment, doesn't it? And the real need to consciously override those panic-driven instincts with deliberate, evidence-based strategy.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you approach your exams? We've covered the incredible power of the proactive plan, mapping everything out. And we've tackled the strategic, sometimes necessary art of the emergency cram session. Now let's talk about the foundational power moves. These are the universal study hacks that will elevate your game, whether you're meticulously planning weeks ahead or, heroically cramming against the clock at the last minute.
Exactly. This section outlines some really powerful study techniques that apply to absolutely everyone, regardless of their timeline or the subject they're studying. First, and arguably the most important foundational technique, is active recall.
We've touched on this, but let's really define it.
Active recall is the absolute bedrock of effective studying, and using it consistently is transformative for learning. Instead of passively rereading your notes or textbooks over and over again.
Which we now know is not very effective.
Right, especially for long-term retention. Instead, you actively try to retrieve the information from your own memory, forcing your brain to do the work.
So how do you actually do that in practice? What are the concrete methods to implement active recall beyond just thinking hard about something?
There are lots of practical methods. Using flashcards is a classic example, whether they're physical cards you make yourself or digital apps like Anki or Quizlet. You see the term or the question on one side, and you actively try to remember the answer or definition before you flip it over to check. Don't just flip it immediately.
Make your brain work for it.
Exactly. Another incredibly effective way is attempting to write down everything you know about a specific topic on a completely blank piece of paper without looking at your notes at all. Just dump your brain onto the page.
The blank sheet method.
Yes. Or you could have a friend or study partner quiz you relentlessly on key concepts, definitions, dates, whatever it might be. The source really emphasizes that it's the effortful struggle to retrieve the information, that moment where you're searching your memory.
That feeling of it being on the tip of your tongue.
That feeling. That is precisely what builds strong, lasting memory pathways in your brain. Neuroscientists call this retrieval practice, and study after study shows it's far more effective for long-term learning than simply rereading because it physically strengthens those neural connections. It makes recall easier and faster the next time you need it. That momentary mental block right before the aha moment, that's where the real durable learning is actually happening.
That's fascinating. So embrace the struggle, basically.
Embrace the struggle. It's productive struggle.
And we keep coming back to the Feynman technique, which you mentioned earlier in the cramming section. It sounds like it's such a powerful universal tool, not just for cramming. How does that simplified version work for any study situation, planned or last minute?
Yes, the Feynman technique is a truly brilliant universal tool for developing deep understanding, not just memorization. It's simple but profound. Step 1. Choose a concept you need to really understand, not just vaguely recognize. Step 2. Try to teach that concept to someone else, or, as we said, something else like the rubber duck, or just write it out as an explanation for a novice using really simple terms. Imagine you're explaining it to a child who has no background knowledge.
Avoid jargon.
Avoid jargon completely. Step 3. Identify your knowledge gaps. This is where you get stuck during your explanation, where you find yourself resorting to complex terminology you can't simplify, or where your explanation just isn't clear or logical. These are your weak points. They reveal where your own understanding is superficial or fuzzy. Step 4. Go back to your source material, your textbook, your notes, specifically to fill those gaps you just identified. Clarify the information for yourself. Then, crucially, try to simplify your explanation further. Repeat this cycle of explain, identify gaps, clarify, simplify, until you can explain the concept crystal clear, concisely, and accurately, without resorting to any complex terms. This process forces you to truly understand the fundamentals, not just memorize surface details, and it automatically pinpoints where you actually fall short.
That sounds incredibly powerful for really getting a concept.
Yeah.
What about those of us who are more visual learners, or maybe struggle to see the big picture when we're presented with just pages and pages of linear text notes? Is there a technique particularly tailored for them?
Absolutely. For visual learners, or anyone who benefits from seeing connections and structure visually, mind mapping can be particularly effective.
Mind maps, okay.
Yeah.
How do they work best for studying?
The method involves starting with the central core idea or topic in the middle of a large blank page. Then you branch out from that central idea with related topics, subtopics, key definitions, important examples, using lines, arrows, maybe different colors for different themes, and even small, simple images or icons.
So it's like a visual hierarchy.
Exactly. The main benefit is that it's an excellent way to visually see the hierarchical relationships and the connections between different concepts. It helps transform dense linear notes into an easily digestible, nonlinear visual summary. It often mirrors how your brain naturally makes associations, making it a really powerful tool for understanding complex relationships and also for creating a one-page summary that's great for review later on.
These all sound like incredibly effective techniques for maximizing the learning process itself. But as you mentioned earlier, your brain can't really function optimally or use these techniques efficiently without the right physical foundation, the right fuel, can it?
Precisely. That brings us squarely to fueling your brain, the non-negotiable self-care. And the core idea here is fundamentally important, yet so often neglected. Your brain is a physical organ, just like your heart or your lungs. And how you treat your physical body directly impacts your cognitive performance, your memory capacity, your focus, and your ability to think clearly, especially when you're under pressure.
And number one on that list, which you've already stressed.
Number one, we've mentioned it twice already because it's that critical and we simply cannot stress it enough. Sleep.
Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm. We need to reinforce that sleep, specifically the different stages like deep slow wave sleep and REM sleep, is when your brain is actively consolidating learning. It's transferring information from short-term holding patterns to long-term storage. It's problem solving subconsciously. It's even clearing out metabolic waste products that build up during waking hours.
So it's not passive time at all.
Not at all. A well-rested mind is demonstrably faster, sharper, much better at creative problem solving, and significantly superior at recalling information accurately. Cutting corners on sleep is a guaranteed path to diminished returns on all the hard work you put into studying. It literally undermines your efforts.
Okay, message received loud and clear on sleep. So no more bragging about pulling all-nighters. It's actively detrimental to performance. What about what we actually put into our bodies, the fuel for this incredible organ?
Nutrition is absolutely vital. The source emphasizes, eat balanced meals that provide sustained energy. Think lean protein like eggs, chicken, fish, or plant-based options like beans and lentils. Pair these with complex carbohydrates, things like oats, brown rice, quinoa, whole grain bread, which release energy slowly, and include healthy fats from sources like avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil.
Why those specific types of food?
These types of foods provide stable, long-lasting fuel for your brain, preventing those dramatic energy spikes and subsequent crashes that wreck your concentration.
And what should we definitely avoid?
Crucially, avoid loading up on sugary snacks, relying on highly caffeinated energy drinks as your primary fuel source, and eating heavy, greasy, highly processed foods. These things lead to sharp energy spikes, yes, but they're inevitably followed by brutal crashes, brain fog, and fatigue.
Right when you need to be sharpest.
Exactly. Precisely when you need sustained mental clarity the most. And alongside food, don't forget to hydrate. Keep a water bottle with you at all times while you're studying. Dehydration, even quite mild dehydration, can cause headaches, significantly impair concentration, reduce overall cognitive function, and just lead to that feeling of mental sluggishness. Keep sipping water throughout the day.
Okay, sleep, good food, water. What about moving our bodies? I know I always feel clearer, more focused, and definitely less stressed after even just a short walk outside. Does movement actually help during these intense study periods?
Yes, movement is incredibly key and very often overlooked when people get stressed and chained to their desks. You don't need to schedule an intense hour-long workout session necessarily. Even a brisk 20-minute walk outside, doing some light stretching at your desk, or even just a few sets of jumping jacks or running in place every couple of hours can do wonders.
Really? Yeah.
The benefits are clear and almost immediate. Movement increases blood flow throughout your body, including to the brain, which delivers vital oxygen and nutrients needed for optimal function. It also helps reduce levels of the stress hormone cortisol, and it just helps clear your head, often leading to better focus and renewed mental energy when you return to your studies. Think of it as an active form of rest for your brain, helping it reset.
An active rest. I like that.
If we connect all this self-care stuff to the bigger picture again, these elements, sleep, nutrition, hydration, movement, they aren't just nice-to-haves or luxuries that you can afford to skip when you feel busy. They are foundational biological requirements for your brain to function optimally and perform well, especially under stress.
Right.
What's fascinating, and maybe a little sad, is how often these critical elements are the very first things sacrificed when we feel pressured for time, despite their proven efficacy in actually boosting cognitive performance and resilience.
It seems so counterintuitive when you lay it out like that.
It does. Which raises another important question for listeners to ponder. How can you consistently prioritize these non-negotiables, like ensuring you get a full night's sleep, or taking time for a healthy meal away from your desk, or that short walk even when your schedule feels absolutely impossible and the pressure is mounting? It often requires a conscious, disciplined decision to value your long-term performance and well-being over those perceived short-term gains from skipping them.
That's a powerful challenge for all of us, not just students. Okay, finally, let's talk about the final countdown, exam day rituals, because how you spend those last few hours leading up to the exam, and crucially, what you do during the exam itself, can significantly make or break your performance, regardless of how well you've prepared beforehand. These are the tactical maneuvers to really shine when it counts.
Absolutely. This is where preparation meets execution. On the morning of the exam itself, first things first, give yourself enough time to wake up naturally if possible, and definitely avoid feeling rushed or frantic. That feeling sets a bad tone.
Start calm.
Start calm. Eat a solid but not overly heavy breakfast. Again, aim for that sustained energy complex carbs, protein, not a sugary cereal that's going to lead to an energy crash midway through the exam.
Okay, good breakfast. What about last-minute studying?
You can do a final, very light review. Maybe look over your mega summary sheet one last time, or flip through your key flashcards just to prime your memory. But emphasize again, absolutely no new material at this point. Trying to cram new information in the last hour will only cause anxiety and likely overload your working memory.
Okay, light review only, if anything.
And then, crucially, put all your notes and study materials completely away at least 60 minutes before the exam is scheduled to start.
Or before.
Yes. Your brain needs this vital time to rest, to consolidate one last time, and importantly, to shift gears from that intense input study mode into output exam-taking mode. Don't be that person frantically flipping through pages right outside the exam room door. It only increases anxiety for you and probably everyone around you.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen people doing that, frantically flipping through notes right before walking into the exam hall. And it always looks like pure panic, not productive learning.
And it often is just panic. To further reduce that morning of stress and avoid forgetting essentials, meticulously pack your bag the night before. Don't leave it till the morning rush.
Smart. What goes in the bag?
This includes multiple pens or pencils, spares or key, an approved calculator, if needed, with fresh batteries already installed, don't risk it dying mid-exam, your student ID, which is often non-negotiable for entry, a simple watch so you're not reliant on finding a wall clock and you can manage your own time effectively. And, if allowed, a water bottle to stay hydrated and maybe a quiet, non-disruptive snack like a granola bar or some nuts, just to keep your energy levels stable during a potentially long exam.
Okay, bag packed, feeling calm.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the exam room, the proctor says you may begin.
Mm-hmm.
What's the absolute best strategy during the exam itself to maximize every point and manage that inevitable pressure?
Right. During the exam, there's a clear tactical strategy outlined in the source. First move, do a brain dump.
Brain dump, what's that?
The very moment you're allowed to begin writing, take maybe 60 seconds, no more, to quickly jot down key formulas, critical dates, important acronyms, crucial definitions, or maybe the steps of a key process onto your scrap paper or the back of the exam booklet, whatever you were worried about forgetting.
Why do that first?
The source explains this as a really powerful way to immediately offload your working memory, reduce that initial anxiety, okay, I've got the formulas down, and ensure that critical information is quickly accessible later without the mental strain of trying to retrieve it under pressure mid-exam.
That sounds incredibly calming, actually. A way to immediately reduce that cognitive load right at the start.
It truly is. It clears mental bandwidth. Then, step 2. Read the instructions carefully. Don't just jump into question 1. Scan the entire exam thoroughly first. Understand how many questions there are in total, how many points each section or question is worth, and mentally budget your time accordingly before you start writing a single answer.
Plan your attack within the exam.
Exactly. This prevents you from accidentally spending way too much time on a low-point question early on, or worse, completely missing an entire section because you mismanaged your time. Next, strategy 3. Tackle easy questions first.
Build momentum.
Precisely. Start with the questions that you look at and immediately know the answers to. This builds crucial momentum, it boosts your confidence right away, and it literally warms up your brain for tackling the tougher problems later on. Plus, it ensures you secure those easy foundational points early. Don't leave easy points on the table.
That makes sense. But what if you hit a wall on a question? Or find yourself just staring stuck on a particularly tricky problem? That happens.
It does happen. The advice here is clear. Don't get stuck. If you find yourself genuinely stumped on a question, spending more than a minute or two making no progress, mark it prominently, put a star next to it, circle the number, and move on.
Just leave it. That feels hard.
It feels hard, but it's strategically smart. It's far, far better to answer 5 other questions you can do in the time you might have wasted spinning your wheels on that one difficult problem. You can always come back to the marked questions later if you have time, perhaps with a fresh perspective, or after having solved other related problems that might trigger your memory. Don't let one hard question derail your whole exam.
Okay. Mark it and move on. Good advice. What about the end?
Finally, if you finish answering all the questions before the time is up, and you should always aim to pace yourself so you have some review time, use every single remaining minute to check your work.
Don't just leave early.
Absolutely not. Go back through your answers systematically. Check for simple calculation mistakes in math problems. Ensure you answered all parts of multi-part questions. Double check that you didn't misread any instructions or the questions themselves didn't ask for not true or always true. Look for obvious errors. Simple mistakes caught in these final minutes are often the difference between grades. Use all the time you're given.
These are definitely the tactical maneuvers you can make, not just before, but during the exam itself, to truly shine and maximize every single point. These feel like the pro moves that really transform all that preparation effort into tangible results on the paper.
They really are. And finally, when it's all over, when you've put down your pen, handed in that paper, and walked out of the room, The most important final ritual, perhaps, is to consciously let it go.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It is, but it's important. You did your best under the circumstances at that particular time. And ultimately, that's all you can ever ask of yourself. Try to remind yourself that one single exam is merely a snapshot of your knowledge on one specific day, under specific conditions. It absolutely does not define your intelligence, your overall worth, or your future potential.
That's a really important perspective to maintain.
It is. So the best thing you can do afterwards is genuinely rest, recover, maybe do something enjoyable to decompress, and then prepare mentally for the next challenge, whether that's another exam tomorrow or simply moving forward with your life beyond finals week. Hashtag, outro.
So we've just journeyed through a pretty comprehensive deep dive, haven't we? We went from understanding the profound power of proactive planning, mapping everything out, breaking down those massive, daunting tasks into achievable micro steps.
All the way through to mastering the strategic art of effective cramming when, inevitably, time is short.
Right. And then finally, embracing those universal tools like active recall and the Feynman technique and the absolutely critical self-care practices that really underpin all successful exam preparation. And frankly, they underpin successfully navigating much of life's other challenges too.
That's right. You, our listener, now have a comprehensive toolkit, we hope, packed with actionable strategies, practical techniques, and crucial insights, ready for you to approach your next exams with, hopefully, more confidence and clarity no matter what circumstances you find yourself in.
It really is about being prepared, being strategic, and also respecting your own cognitive limits and needs.
Absolutely.
So here's a final thought for you to mull over. Considering the proven power of active recall, that effortful struggle to retrieve information, which we learn builds strong memory pathways, where else in your daily life or your ongoing learning could you maybe apply this struggle to retrieve principle for better retention and deeper understanding beyond just studying for exams? Think about maybe your hobbies, your work tasks, or even just remembering details from daily conversations.
That's a great question. Or maybe thinking about the self-care aspect. What's just one small, non-negotiable self-care item from our deep dive today? Perhaps it's committing to scheduling those non-negotiable 7-8 hours of sleep, or maybe ensuring you take that 20-minute walk outside every day that you'll commit to fiercely protecting during your next demanding period, knowing now that it's not a luxury, but actually a necessity for achieving your peak performance.
One thing will you prioritize?
We truly encourage you to take these ideas and apply what you've learned today. Knowledge is really only powerful when it's put into consistent practice.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today and for trusting us to navigate these important insights with you. Go forth, be well-informed, and absolutely conquer those exams and whatever other challenges life happens to throw your way.